Reggie here, and I want to welcome you to another one of my videos. In this video, we are going to take a look at some hacks, specifically comic book related hacks that I employ here in the comic book room. These are things that I've been doing off and on for years that I find extremely helpful, and my hope is that you will find them to be helpful as well. And certainly if you do, I want to encourage you to share this video in your community. With that said, let's get to the hacks. The very first hack that I want to talk about involves this right here, painter's tape. And it doesn't matter whether it's green, blue, or red, painter's tape is a versatile tool. It is a versatile hack that I use for a lot of things around the house, but certainly here in the comic book room. So because I am a huge fan of painter's tape and use it for a host of things in the comic book room, I actually made the investment and picked myself up one of these tape dispensers from Amazon. And I like this thing because it allows you to tear off a piece of tape using the serrated edge, which gives the tape a lot cleaner presentation, especially if you happen to be selling books to someone or using the tape to close the backside of a flap. Not all comic book bags of all sizes come with the ability to self-seal, so you sometimes will need some tape of some sort to apply to the back of the bag. And I like painter's tape for several different reasons, including the fact that it does not tear the bag and it also does not leave any residue behind. So that's just one of the reasons why I enjoy painter's tape. But let's say that I'm sending off a large bundle of books to someone for some reason or another. And I will tell you, there are a lot of different ways that I will approach this. I'll show you one for the purpose of this video. But if I'm sending off a large bundle of books to someone, I will actually use some painter's tape to aid in the shipping, to prevent this bundle of books from being shifted around while in transit. And what I do is I actually flip over the very first book in the stack to make sure that it's protected using the back of the backing board on this side and the back of the backing board on that side. And I basically affix tape to all sides of the bundle to prevent it from shifting in transit. All right, so there we have a little bundle of comics that is essentially protected on the front and the back side by backing boards, held in place by painter's tape on all sides. So I did that relatively quickly, but you get the process. One of the things that you may have noticed that I did was folded the edges of the tape on one end. And I think that this makes for a cleaner presentation when someone receives it. And it also allows them to easily be able to tear off the painter's tape because one end is folded down and they don't have to use a fingernail or something like that to try to catch the edge of it. This, in my mind, actually facilitates someone being able to undo the package that you've sent to them. And as I mentioned before, the painter's tape does not leave any residue and should not rip the bag, which is a huge bonus. I can't tell you how many times I've received bundles from people where they've actually used some kind of a packing tape of some type that when I go to grab it to pull it off, it actually rips the bag, which means that I then have to replace the bag that I just essentially bought, if you will. Painter's tape, again, makes for a really nice way to bundle this stuff up, but then also doesn't damage anything in the process of removal. One of the other things that I will do for people whenever I send them books is I will oftentimes write on the painter's tape, like pull here or pull this one or something like that. Again, it's just all about making the experience enjoyable, if you will, for somebody that happens to be buying from you. This is just one method that I employ for creating bundles of comics. There are several others that I use depending upon what it is that I happen to be sending. But hopefully this is one of the things that you all will be able to leverage. Painter's tape is great for this. So I ship a lot of things, and I do use Gemini shippers to mail out a lot of stuff. But one of the things that I hate is the flap will never stay down, or this folds will never stay down. So what I will do is I will use a piece of painter's tape or two to affix the flap in its proper position. And sometimes I'll do a little bit of a crisscross here or something like that to hold that piece down. But one of the other things that I will do, especially if someone is buying a single comic, is I will place the comic inside of the Gemini shipper and I will use two pieces of tape. one at the top, one at the bottom, to hold the book in place to prevent it from shifting around. So basically just use a little bit of tape at the top and the bottom to hold this in place. And one of the other little hacks that I will use is I will sometimes use a old backing board. I will place that over top of the book just to give it a little bit of extra protection, especially if it happens to be a valuable book. And then I will go ahead and close it up, and then fold the box up, and then add some packing tape to seal this thing all together, and then I will go ahead and mail it off. But there you have it, just a couple of ways in which I use painter's tape here in the comic book room. As comic book collectors, we know all about bagging and boarding, and specifically re-bagging and boarding. This is the practice of taking an old bagging board and replacing it with a fresh bagging board, which ultimately gives your comic new life. The question is, what do you do with all the old bags and boards that you have? Instead of throwing them away, I would encourage you to save them. And here's why I say that. While the bag may not look all that great, and while the backing board might look a little dingy versus a new one, there is still some life to be had in these old boards. Believe it or not, old backing boards can come in extremely handy. I personally like to take a lot of notes, and whenever I'm creating videos for the channel, I actually capture my thoughts on old backing boards. And what you see here in my hand are dozens of videos that I've released here on the channel that started out on an old backing board. I am a huge fan of recycling. I literally have 2 massive recycling containers that we fill up every single week with household things, whether they be cans or glass or boxes that come here to the house from Amazon, or, you know, if I buy a slab or something like that. But when I do make purchases that contain bubble wrap, I will actually repurpose that bubble wrap for things here in the room. So one of the challenges that we face in the comic book room is that not every bin is always going to be completely full. And when that happens, your books, if you're moving them around, can fall over. When they fall over inside of the bin, they can actually get damaged. And so one of the things that I will do to prevent that from happening is I will try to fill that void in the back of the comic book bin with something. And so for the purpose of this hack, we're actually going to use some old bubble wrap. I'm going to take some bubble wrap, fold it up, and I'm going to just stick it right back there in the backside. That fills up that void on the backside of the bin, and it keeps the books upright. This works incredibly well, to be honest with you. And there's actually some other things that you can do if you have backing boards. If you have a full pack of backing boards or whatever, you can actually stick the entire bundle of backing boards in the backside. Or if you have old backing boards, depending upon how many you have and how much space, you can actually use those to wedge in the backside as well. It's really all about trying to close up that void to prevent the books from shifting around inside the box. Not a week goes by where someone doesn't ask me how I mount my slabs to the wall behind me. I actually use a product from Collector Mount to affix the slabs. And for the last few years, I've actually used drywall screws to anchor the mounts to the wall securely. But according to the owner of the company, you can also use command strips as well. So that's a little bit of a hack for you all. With that said, I'm going to wrap up this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. And if you did, I want to encourage you to give the video a thumbs up. If you need to reach out to me, feel free to do so on Instagram at Regie Collects. Take care.